friends. Welcome to the Global Leadership Podcast, where leaders of all sorts come to grow and expand their influence in healthy and holistic ways. I'm your host, Whitney Putnam, and in today's episode, we are diving into some of the more intense real-world topics associated with work. Topics like, how can we understand and engage with younger leaders around us? How can we handle workplace betrayal? And even when I say that, I guarantee some of us feel that word betrayal inside of us because we've experienced it. We're also talking about how we can better handle anxiety at work. And fortunately, we get to do this all with the practical wisdom of Jo Saxton. If you're not familiar with Jo, Jo is a repeat faculty at the GLS, most recently taking the stage in 2024. She's the founder of the Ezer Collective, dedicated to investing in women across the world, equipping them to own their voice and boldly step into their calling. She currently serves as the executive director of the 25, which is a leadership development initiative at Bethel University. Jo describes it a little bit inside of this interview. It's a cohort program focused on understanding unique career challenges and opportunities that female leaders face. She's also the co-host of the Lead Stories podcast, and she's written several books, including Ready to Rise. In this conversation, it actually took place at the 2024 Global Leadership Summit, where Jo sat down with founder and CEO of Novus Global, Jason Jaggard. Jo's incredibly transparent and open and full of practical wisdom about these really challenging workplace topics. I found myself in listening to this episode thinking about, gosh, there are young leaders in my life, and I want to ask the questions that Jo brings up in this conversation. So I plan on sending this to the young leaders in my life and starting the conversation. And I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Share this episode with some young leaders and let it be a diving board into great topics for you to cover with those people that you get to mentor. Let's dive into this conversation with Jo and Jason.
Jo Saxton, thanks for being on the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. And you just literally minutes ago walked off the stage,
Woohoo!
communicating in front of hundreds of thousands of people. How do you feel?
I feel great. I feel like I'm ready to eat a lot of food.
Yes.
And yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but I'm also very glad it's done.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Thank you. Very kind.
And you look relieved. You look light as a feather.
I feel the lightness. I do. I feel the happiness and joy of the job being done.
Do you have a go-to post speaking in front of hundreds of thousands of people snack?
Anything.
Yeah,
actually.
great.
It's more I have a go-to size, which is shovel. Just shovel it in.
Wonderful. So I think I saw some shovels outside. So I think
that'll be me.
They're preparing
Yeah.
for the cathartic moment.
Yeah.
Well, you did a great job, and I would love for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So at Bethel, I know that one of the things you're up to many things, author, speaker, et cetera, et cetera. But I think one of your primary things is leading the 25.
Yes.
And I would love for you to tell our audience what the 25 is and why it's so important.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. The 25 is a cohort program that basically gathers students as they are going through their undergraduate journey, whatever career track, and comes alongside them with mentoring and leadership development with a particular angle on looking at the distinct challenges and opportunities that women are facing in the workforce.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And so it's been a real privilege. I think there are a number of reasons why I love it. I love the fact that it was the brainchild of a group of alumni and women leaders who got together and thought, how do we invest in the next generation? And didn't just complain about it, but actually gathered kind of a village of friends to do something and to start something. So even the idea of it, like intergenerational kind of mentoring and stuff, I thought was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I just love what it does for someone's trajectory, because otherwise you have the degree and everything, but you and I know that networks count.
That's right.
I think the US Department of Labor and Statistics said that something like 85% of jobs are found through networking. And so there you are working really hard to get good grades, and no. And so we, as part of the cohort program, we give them access to industry mentors, give them site visits in different fields, often have panels, and they can ask what questions they want. I kind of choose, like we always do one on money.
Very good.
And how to negotiate pay, how to network, speed networking nights, how to conflict resolution, team leadership, those sorts of things, different, understanding your own leadership style.
Yeah.
So that whether you're nursing or wherever, you're equipped.
You're equipped. I love that. So then with older leaders, because I think this may not resonate with everybody, but if you're listening to this and you've been in the game for a while, I do think it's easy to focus on your immediate team versus on your future team. And so talk to our audience a little bit about why seasoned leaders, will say, should focus and spend time on the younger generation. And before you answer that question, how much time do you think leaders should be spending on folks who are new, fresh, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, maybe not necessarily the best contributors, they're kind of a long game investment. Do you have any thoughts for older leaders on how to invest in the younger generation?
There's a quote, and I want to say it's Socrates, but I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. And it says that you can see the strength of a community and a society if you're prepared to sow seeds, knowing that you'll never sit under the shade of those trees.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really powerful for the good of humanity. Particularly if you're a seasoned leader, you're established, you've made mistakes and you've got back up again.
Yeah.
And there's so much unconscious competence now.
Yes.
There's something really powerful in considering how you're going to pay it forward, give it back, whatever your phrase is.
Yeah.
And in terms of how much time, I would ask that you'd at least know somebody's name. If
you're listening to this, I wish you could see Jo's face. You're very expressive. They had a little tongue in cheek to it, like somebody's name. Yeah.
I think proximity matters.
Yeah.
And I think when you have been used to, I get it. As seasoned leaders, we're getting on with it. You're getting the job done. And maybe you're thinking of the people who are just next to you. But actually, to consider a moment of your time, whether it is a mentoring relationship or whether it's an informational interview, whether it's sitting on a panel, whether it is going to your local school or institution and telling your story, it goes way further than you give it credit for.
Yeah.
Way further.
See, that's powerful. And two things I want to double click on there for a second. One is, I love that you use the phrase unconscious competencies. I don't know necessarily if everyone knows what that is. Could you please explain what an unconscious competency is?
I think when I understand it, I think of it as you don't know what you know.
That's right.
You don't know what you know because you've been busy living it.
Yes.
And you need to have it drawn out of you.
Yes.
And questions do that, which is why I love having established leaders on panels because they never know what's coming.
Yeah.
And also you see what it brings out, the stories that they tell or the angle that they share. Yeah. And the thing with those unconscious competencies is they're leadership gold. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I had a mentor of mine, and I got to meet his mentor. And before he introduced me, he said, "This guy has forgotten more than I've ever known." And there's this idea, like, things, and if you're listening to this and you've been doing this for a while, things that you don't realize that you know, and other younger people need to learn from you, even if you don't necessarily feel like you have something to offer. You have more to offer than you realize.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes we set a really weird standard on what's valuable to learn from. And actually, your failure will teach people things. Rather than, well, I failed and I didn't do that for long. That's okay.
Yeah.
We don't need to decide what they need to learn just yet. Let them ask the question.
Oh, that's great.
Because there are things from failure. There are lessons from failure and success, from burnout and great chapters of our lives that are all really valuable for someone so that they can make different mistakes if need be.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you only get to learn about the mistakes if you have some kind of proximity.
Absolutely.
Which the 25 helps facilitate.
Absolutely. And proximity is huge. Proximity is huge in terms of inspiration. Because, I didn't know I could be that until we did a site visit to a company which did marketing stuff and brand merchandise, and the entire executive team was female. Wow. And just that was the takeaway for a number of the students. Like, I don't think I've seen this.
Yeah.
I didn't expect this.
It can be done.
And as those leaders told their journeys, one said, well, actually, I was in pre-med and now I'm in this area. And so it was just so rich because when do you get to have those conversations? When do you get to have like intentional time hearing and seeing, witnessing an example and actually having that confidence built in you saying, maybe I could.
Just out of curiosity, how do you select for the 25? Like if someone's listening to this and they're kind of a rock star, would you want them to reach out to you and say, hey, I'd be thrilled to be on a panel. I'd be thrilled to
Yay!
How does that work if someone's listening to this? Like, I would love to do that.
I would love to hear from people because there are all kinds of ways in which you could. I mean, we're based in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, but also there are things called podcasts.
Yeah.
There are virtual things that we can do. So I always want to hear from leaders. I tell you the ones I'm really looking for all the time.
Please.
STEM.
Yes.
STEM leaders.
Yeah.
But because I think as as society makes more room for different groups of people at different times.
That's right.
There are some leadership moments or mentoring spaces that are a bit of a deficit.
Yep.
So,
and STEM's one of those.
That's
right.
But honestly, if you're not in STEM, yes, I still want to hear from you. So,
yeah, wonderful. That's fantastic. So now we're going to reverse a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we're also hoping that people who are listening to this, there are some young leaders, emerging leaders. And you, yeah.
I will withhold my enthusiasm.
Yay. Yeah, if you could just tone it down just for a second. Really, I don't want your whole power. No, bring it all. So you get to survey a lot of young leaders. And so we feel at the summit that you have a nice pulse on what's happening in that generation. I know it's not a monolith, but you have a unique perspective into it. I would love for you to share a little bit about what you're seeing as some strengths and maybe some weaknesses that you're seeing coming out of the generation as they're in college, graduating, coming into the workforce.
Observations. I would say they have been through a lot at a formative time of their lives. And that has, I think we're still seeing the impact of that. Yeah. So I don't know whether that's all of that is a strength or a weakness yet, but as a leader, I'm watching and thinking, I know we can say we are 4 years on from COVID or 5 years on or whatever year it is, but actually keep watching for the gaps and the things that were missed and missed with and just that got confusing.
Well, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but like what are some things to be looking for? Because I've got nephews who are in that generation and like what should I be paying attention for in order to help walk alongside of?
I think what I found in listening to them is intermittent confidence. Intermittent confidence, because when you have been behind a screen for school for a year, there's interactions. I don't mean a lack of social skills because we're looking at a generation who are digital natives, but I am seeing that the cost of, I think we're all reckoning with loss. I think we're all, so on one level, there is a tiredness that I have never known like I knew in those years. Yeah. I'm just asking what that meant for a teenager when they were 14 and they didn't get to see friends for a year and they didn't get to do all these things. Yeah. And what did it mean for the confidence of, well, if you just do this, it's going to go your way. Yeah. Well, it didn't, did it? For a long time. It didn't go anybody's way. And we did not know. One of the things I have 2 teenage girls. One of them said to me, she said, I remember watching your face and I could tell you were trying not to be afraid on our behalf. And it's the things that they observe as well. And what, I don't know how you began your 2020, but I remember seeing lots of people with 2020 vision and this is our strategy. And it's like, why don't you just set fire to all your dreams and all your vision boards? They are just ash. Yeah. And on one level, we kind of, I don't know that we bounced back. I think we limped back. Yeah. I think for Gen Z, depending on where you are in the world, that's your first emerging adulthood experience. Yeah. That anything that you could assume is not safe to assume. And what you're up against is invisible. Yeah. And there is a reckoning and a grief culturally that you can't make head nor tail of. And that's just talking of one piece, let alone the geopolitical shifts and all of those as well. Yeah. So I think intermittent confidence.
I heard a study recently that said that the next generation, usually younger generations, are known for risk and adventure and jumping out there. But they were saying, in light of what you just said in terms of COVID and the lockdowns and everything, that there's a new generation coming in that they actually really crave security and stability and consistency. Have you seen that with the 25?
I have. And just with the young adults I meet and know, I think there has been I'm not ready to try that yet. Yeah. It's like, just hold back a minute. Yeah. And it's not that they're not ambitious, and it's definitely not that they're not talented. Yeah. Incredibly talented, incredibly creative. And so but sometimes it's like saying, so what's stopping you from just going after it and just giving it a try? And I don't know that there's always words for that, but it's just something I'm seeing. Yeah.
Well, in some ways, if you're a leader and you're leading what we might call a stable organization, although,
stable.
Yeah, stable. That goes in quotes. Some can be more stable than others, but you might think that young people don't want to work for you because it's kind of boring or whatever. Like, think again, because there might be a younger generation that's actually really desperate for like a sober job, like a job they can trust, like a job that's not going to disappear on them tomorrow. Yeah.
I think one of the other things I've seen a lot is, and I've heard from other employers and things of saying that, and these are broad brushstrokes.
Right.
These are broad brushstrokes, but I think there'll be more young adults who are like, you know what, I'm not sure I want to do that. Maybe paying particular attention to their mental well-being, which frankly is a good thing. Yes. And their emotional well-being, and maybe not as willing to stretch themselves, overextend themselves. Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's just reality, but it makes you realize how much you could rely on that once.
Yeah.
On someone who would happily kind of give their all, and people are like, nah.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. I'll wait here. I'll wait.
So then if you could, so those are some of the challenges that they faced. And you mentioned some of their strengths in terms of their creativity and their desire for sobriety and success. If there's someone listening to this that's maybe in their, like maybe 20 years old or something like that, and they're listening to this right now, what would you want to say to them to give them a leg up? Like oftentimes in coaching, I'll say to a client, like if you could puppet master them, obviously they have their own agency and everything like that, but if you could move the strings, what would you want the emerging generation, how would you move their strings to help them really have a fulfilling, rewarding life?
I would ask questions because I think people want to interact. And I would say, what are you curious about? I would invite curiosity. Because I feel like whenever you are going to live your life in a particular way, you've got to own it. And if we can't fake you into something, because, and nor should you, I want to ask them to say, but what's the change you want to see? Because we are also seeing that. We're also seeing a generation say enough on certain things. Say, no, we're not doing it that way either. And so I would invite people to say, what are you curious about? What difference would you like to make?
Yeah.
And rather than a commission, it's a conversation. And honestly, I've been wrestling with the idea of, like, sometimes I hear people say, well, this next generation wants to be authentic. And I thought every generation wanted to be authentic. You know what I mean? When people started talking about millennials, they want to be authentic. So I'm Gen X. I bleed Gen X. Yeah. And so I'm like, if it's not authentic. But the realization is what's authentic for me is different to what's authentic for my 19-year-old.
Interesting. Like, can you mind elaborating on that? Like, how so?
I think because we were in different contexts. Yeah. We were in different, in our case, we were in different countries, but we were in different contexts. So what it meant to be real about something, there are threads. There are threads about systemic realities and all of that. But I didn't have the internet. Yeah. So, do you know what I mean? I didn't have the internet. Yeah. So there's a whole, it's the principle of authenticity and the practice of it sometimes look different.
Yeah. Well, and I'm wondering what this is, we don't want to go too far down this road, but just last night I was having dinner with a Gen Z, and he said that he has a high value for authenticity, and he uses ChatGPT to write love letters to his girlfriend. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. Let's say, and my instinct is to find something like maybe wrong with that. But I think that they are, with AI and with technology, they are wrestling with what does it mean to be authentic when you can have things done for you. Or, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that in terms of how the next generation can navigate deep inauthenticity with deep fakes. I mean, the world is about to become very inauthentic.
It's incredible, isn't it? And I think the best way to recognize a counterfeit is to know the real thing, rather than always panic about counterfeits. Yeah. And so I'm going to ask, when I'm thinking of the young adults I'm around, I'm asking about, I'm asking them, what do you think healthy relationships look like? What do you think a good work ethic looks like? Yeah. What do you think ambition looks like? Yeah. And does that work for you? And tell me about the context that you're saying all of these things. Is it you living an independent life, or is it contingent on someone else paying for your life to exist? But I think the conversations have to draw it out, because if they can't identify the real thing, it's always going to be hard to know. Yeah. And even then, sometimes you get tripped, don't you?
No kidding.
And even then, you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah, I thought this.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, that's right.
But in all the areas, whether it's their work ethic, whether it's how they do relationships, I'm always asking, if you don't know what your values are, if you can say I don't like that, but if you don't know why you don't like that, we need to keep going deeper with this conversation.
That's good. And I imagine inquiry is a way you can do that. The question asking helps them think for themselves.
Because that's what you'd want for every generation of leaders, that they've thought things through, that they've looked at their context, that they've parsed their context and their skill set.
Yeah, that's really good. Even so, if you're listening to this and you're an older leader, a question maybe to ask, how often are you asking questions or telling answers? Yeah. And telling answers is, fine in certain contexts, but you'll probably get more juice out of helping people think through the questions you've already thought through. Yeah. But not giving them the answer.
And not already deciding the answer. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like you can ask questions, and then you can ask questions because you're using it like a set piece.
Yeah, leading questions, yes. Yeah, that's right.
and let's not do the set piece. Or at least and I know we kind of, if you've been leading a while, you know the things you're thinking. Yeah. But I would invite us to be curious as well.
Yeah, let the younger generation surprise you.
Yeah.
get off of your answer, ask the question, and they will surprise you with a better answer maybe than what you had.
Yeah.
You mentioned betrayal.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating about that topic. I don't hear people talk about that topic very much from the stage, yet everyone has experienced it in one way or another. So I appreciated you going there. And let's define betrayal too, because I think when people hear betrayal, they think of like infidelity, or something like that. And it's like these huge, things. And I really appreciate that you brought it down to earth. Not that it was not a significant moment for you, but it was more of a common, like something that happens all too often. And so first, can you give us a little bit of a palette of different types of betrayal?
Well, here on the betrayal hot list, we have number one, someone stealing your ideas.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
When, particularly in a working environment, in a professional environment, if you're sharing ideas and then someone regurgitates it or just blueprints it and takes credit for it, there is a betrayal because you've shared that as part of your creative process.
Yes.
And frankly, they're your ideas.
Yeah.
I think there is a sense in which when you're being undermined in your leadership, there's a bit of a betrayal because there's a sense of, do you not trust I can do what you've given me to do?
Yeah.
Do you really not want me to do what you've given me to do?
Yeah.
Are you tolerating me or celebrating me in this workspace?
Yeah.
Am I being tokenized in this workspace? All of those things would be reflection. There's a betrayal there because in your context, you're there. I'm not saying everyone's family. It's a job.
Yeah.
But can I do my job?
Yeah.
Or are you doing things that get in the way of me being able to be effective in my job?
Well, and so let's take those one by one. So then with the stealing ideas, and there's like that's happened to me and that hurts. And where I'd like to for a minute I want to talk to the betrayer.
Yeah.
Because I think just like everyone always has a story about how they were bullied.
Yeah.
Probably there's also a story about how you bullied.
Yeah.
But we don't remember.
Sadly, yes, in my case.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I don't remember those stories as much. I remember Matt Zobrist who threw a dead frog on me, but I don't remember. Yeah, I mean, whatever. But
dude, where are you?
Where are you?
Where are you, Matt?
Yeah, therapy. So but I probably do. There probably is someone somewhere who's got a story about me. And so for people listening to this, we're going to get into when you've been betrayed. But for a second, I want to talk to people who also betray. And so what could we say to folks who are on the verge of taking an idea? Because I don't think people wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to betray people today.
Yeah.
But they do. And I have.
Yeah.
And so what would you say to a person, like putting yourself in their shoes to say, hey, like you're on the edge of the precipice, like what warning would you give to us to keep us away from betrayal?
I would say don't underestimate the impact of what you're doing, even though you feel a pressure to deliver something.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
If you feel the pressure to be productive,
and
the pressure to prove yourself,
it's
very tempting to have an idea and say, well, we were talking about it and rationalize it.
Yeah.
I think there can be a lot of self-justification in those moments.
Yeah.
And to say you don't actually lose anything by celebrating what somebody else has brought.
Yes. Say that again louder for the people in the back.
Okay. You don't know. I would say you don't lose anything.
Yeah.
By celebrating an idea that somebody else has brought.
Yeah.
Because then you become the person who spots talent.
That's right. Yeah.
You become the person who collaborates and who brings out the best in other people.
Yeah.
And you can be known for that, which is a valuable thing.
So, and it makes other people want to work for you.
Yeah.
Because they're going to see you as someone who's going to amplify their voice versus steal their voice.
Yeah. You cultivate people.
That's right. Yeah. And we talk in our firm, we've got a lot of coaches and there's a lot of intellectual IP that goes around. Yeah. And we talk a lot about, hey, like when in doubt, cite your source.
Yeah.
And delight. We actually have a rule where our coaches are not allowed to write an article. We're not dogmatic about it, but it's a principle.
Yeah.
Don't write an article unless you're also quoting someone else in the firm.
Oh, wow.
Because it's not just about you.
That's quite cool, though.
It's right. And so it allows us to be thinking, how can I, and you still get to say, it's still maybe your idea, but we want you, like there are other people in the firm who might have a great coin of phrase or an illustration of that idea. And in our mind, you look cooler now.
Yeah.
Because now you're a research person. Now you're citing sources.
Now you're a thought leader.
That's exactly right.
I love that because also it also gets everybody intentional about collaboration.
That's right.
And it gets people thinking, I don't have to steal ideas because actually what I do, including other people's ideas, is what I do.
Yeah.
Is how I lead.
Yeah, that's good. And there's a myth that people think he or she who has the idea wins, but it's not true. It's he or she who cultivates the ideas wins.
Absolutely.
And so then if you're tempted to take something as your own, or you know what? Because I even don't think people sometimes.
I agree. Sometimes they're not even sure.
You read my mind. They don't realize they're doing it, and that's why assume that you are.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
As a best practice, if you got something great, ask yourself, where did I get that from?
Absolutely. I think, I know that we want to be original and all of those things, but I think I kind of like to treat it like an English essay that I had to do at school. You always, if you're writing an essay on Shakespeare, people are going to know when Shakespeare's talking, guys.
That's great.
I grew up in inner city London.
Yes.
You know, different language. And so at some point, you're going to have to say to be or not to be, and actually say, that's a quote from when he wrote these things.
I didn't make that up.
And that didn't just come from me.
No. And by the way, can we be honest? Let's be real here for a second. I see on Instagram and social media, people rip off people's quotes
all the time. And I'm like, what did your English teacher tell you?
That's right.
It's not hard.
No,
it drives me nuts.
That's right. And I can't figure it out. It's like, you did not say that. James Clear said that, right? You did not say. Beyonce said that. You did not say that.
Up like this. Yeah, no,
you didn't say that, and you know that you didn't say it.
We all know.
Yeah,
we all know you did.
And here's the thing: I want for those of you who are tempted, especially if you're content creators, because that's like the thing now. Do you actually, if someone looks at your stuff and they know that you are misquoting or stealing or something, they will not respect you anymore.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's like a withdrawal from your trust account.
That's right.
It really is.
That's right.
And sometimes you don't know who it came from. So say you don't know.
That's right.
Say it's not from me, but I read this somewhere. I wish I couldn't tell you who it was.
That's right.
Because you're still not crediting yourself.
And put like unknown, and someone else will tell you in the comments. That was Socrates.
That was Socrates.
That's right, or whatever.
I'm not sure, but it wasn't you.
Okay, so now I want to flip it to the people who've been betrayed when you feel like people have stolen your ideas and or where you feel like a boss has not advocated for you or worse, prohibited success.
Yeah.
What are some practical things that one is maybe, and not to put you on the spot because we've never talked about this before, but what are mistakes people make when they are betrayed that maybe just makes it worse? Mm-hmm. And then what would you recommend people do when they're betrayed, it makes things better? I
think lashing out could be a problem.
Yeah, but that's what we want to do.
And it's a very understandable.
That's right.
It's a very understandable response.
Yeah.
Like I never confronted the guy who stole my ideas. Partly because I was just tired and I just thought, it's too late now.
Yeah.
It felt like it was one and done.
Yeah.
So that was a problem. I think lashing out isn't a great one. I would encourage you to watch what happens with bitterness. Because here's the thing, you can feel really justified.
Yeah.
And you could be really justified.
Yeah.
But in the end, you're the one who's left carrying it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
And it can be quite erosive.
Yes.
To you. So I think in when it's a kind of instance like that, I think we have more agency than we always give ourselves credit for.
Yes.
And so if you're in an environment where betrayal and your boss say, then you might need to give yourself a timeline. There have been certain circumstances where I'm like, reality check, I can't leave right now, but I'm going to be done in a year. And even knowing it was a year helped because I'd actually said, okay, I'm owning this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come up with a plan and I'm going to work my way through it.
Yeah.
There have been times maybe there are other people who can advocate for you in certain circumstances, but I would what you want to make sure you're not doing is getting so consumed by it that you never trust anybody again. You can never share your ideas again.
Yeah.
And all of those things. Now, did I learn a few things? Yes.
Yeah.
I do share my idea. I don't ask as many people. I think through, are they friends or does that person treat me like a rival?
Yeah.
Because if they treat me like a rival, it's not that I'm not going to be friends with them. I just may not entrust the seeds of my ideas.
That's good. So for our listeners, Jo shared a story about how, was it a boss?
It was a colleague.
Yeah. Just like full
on.
Not only stole the ideas, but then dissuaded you, like criticized your ideas and then stole them.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit what we're talking about here. And I wanted to double click on something that you said that was really good. Well, I wasn't planning on going here, but when we were watching your talk in the green room and you mentioned how you didn't talk to your boss, and I was like, not knowing the context or anything, I was like, talk to the colleague, like that thing. And obviously there's some relational intelligence there.
Yeah.
And also there might be reasons why you wouldn't, or what, would you mind? Here's what, one is if you could go back and do it over again, would you have talked to them? Two is give us a little bit of a rubric of when to talk to people and when not to talk to people.
I still don't think I would have talked to them.
Yeah.
Because I think my regret was not about not mentioning it, but not trusting the idea earlier.
Yeah.
That was my
good.
bigger regret,
That's right.
actually.
Yeah.
Because then they would have called me innovative and bold.
Yeah. and you are.
And that, thank you.
Both of those things.
And so I think if you see it happening on a regular basis, you do have to say something.
Okay. So
you do have to say something. There have been moments when I've seen someone steal somebody else's idea, and I'll be like, "Oh, you thought that too?" Because I had a great conversation with so and so about that, and didn't they do an amazing job? So I'm not humiliating them.
Yeah.
But I am making it very clear it wasn't their idea.
That's generous.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have learned now, if someone's like in the dynamic, and it's funny you're asking me this, because I think I realize now it had more of an impact in how I elevate other leaders than I've realized.
Yeah.
Because now I'm more likely to gossip good stuff to a boss.
Oh, that's
on
great.
someone else's behalf.
Yeah.
Look, I know they don't say much in those meetings, but you should hear some of their ideas sometimes.
That's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that I do a lot more.
Yeah, because you went through the pain of it.
Because you know things are in there, and say, you know, I know they may not speak up much in meetings, but that could be as much a cultural thing as anything else.
Yeah.
They are receiving wisdom rather than feeling that they get to give it. So don't write them off. You might want to ask them. I do a lot more of that.
Yeah.
As a result.
Oh, I love that. Well, that's so redemptive too. So it's a way of making something from the pain.
Yeah.
And creating a positive environment because of it. And people are like, why? Like, I can imagine someone saying to you, like, why are you so encouraging? Like, why do you lift people up? And it's like, well, because I know the pain of when that does.
Yeah. And the pain and the impact.
Yeah.
The pain and the impact, because when someone else gets credited and it opened up doors.
Yeah.
It opens up doors to somebody else.
It does. Of course it does. Yeah. Well, and credit matters.
Yeah, it does.
And we don't like to say that necessarily, but it really does.
It does.
And it's actually one of the easiest ways to honor somebody.
Yeah.
Is to give credit and to create cultures of credit.
Absolutely.
You know, where we actually care.
That. Yeah.
You know,
where we actually care.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Leadership, when we care, you guys, it's a big thing.
Yeah. So the last question. The last time we spoke, we had a great conversation where you shared some tips on self-care, self-management, and you talked about in today's talk, you talked about trauma and stress and anxiety. I would love to hear, are there any current self-care practices that you're really proud of? Is there anything that you've stuck with? Is there anything you've learned since the last time we talked around how you're handling yourself and serving yourself?
I have learned to value silence a lot. Like, I kind of start the day with it could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. This morning was 10 minutes of silence. And it just, I'm not even sure I understand the correlation.
Yeah.
I just know it's helpful. I'm like, if it works, I'm keeping it.
Yeah, that's right.
Art galleries have always been a wonderful thing for me.
Really?
Yeah, always.
That's fun.
They have always been a space of, I don't know whether it's a creative environment, that's always been a place which has kind of fed me.
Yeah. How often do you go?
I try and give myself a little stay. Whenever I'm traveling and I go to a city on vacation, I'm always like, where's the gallery?
Where's the gallery?
Where's the gallery? That's just part of the thing.
Do you have preference, modern art versus?
Oh, it depends, actually.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a big Impressionism fan.
Okay.
I'm going to sound so snobby when I say this.
Do it.
But I like seeing that in Europe.
Yeah.
I know, that sounds terrible. I suddenly heard myself and thought, oh my gosh, you are that person.
I think it sounds like someone who's worked hard to be able to afford themselves certain experiences.
And my family are there. So you're going home to see the rallies. And so
the rallies. I've not heard that phrase before. That's wonderful.
And so that helps. I tell you the thing most currently that I'll share with you that I'm learning is to make sure that my self-care is not a hidden way of self-improvement. And that I'm not just trying to now, don't get me wrong, there is a place for that.
Of course.
But when I look at the balance of, like, if there was a smorgasbord, charcuterie board of self-care, that it's not all one thing, which is about you improving. Yeah. But what about comfort? What about nurture? What about fun? Hello, leaders, fun. Have you had any this year?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That's great.
And to make sure that there's a full palette.
Yeah.
Of that.
I love that. Well, speaking of fun, you are so much fun.
Thank you.
To talk to. We are out of time. And
we'll have to do this again
Jo,
sometime.
I always feel that way when we see each other. Thank you so much. Thanks for offering your gift. Thank you for taking care of yourself so that you have something to offer. And we're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
I personally find it fascinating that Jo and Jason go all over the place in this conversation, from the young leader conversation to workplace betrayal to actually talking about anxiety. Feels a lot like my normal work week, where there's a lot to be stewarding. And one thing that I didn't even think through all the way. And at first, when they started talking about it, I thought, I don't really need this part, was when Jo and Jason started talking about if you have ever betrayed someone and have taken an idea, what's an alternate route? And one thing that we really carry at the GLN and personally as a leader is really, really important to me is collaboration. And I loved the reframe that Jo took. Instead of taking an idea from somebody, what if you went to the table and you said, I heard this incredible idea from a teammate, and I want to credit my teammate with that awesome idea, and let's run with it. And when we move forward that way, we become heroes of people who spot talent. We become collaborators. We also infuse encouragement into our teammates, letting them know that they are seen and valued. I thought that perspective was so brilliant. And I just think, even if you're not thinking about betraying a teammate, ways that we can spot other people's ideas and steward them inside of our teams. What a great conversation between Jo and Jason. You guys, thanks so much for joining us inside of this podcast community. We want to make sure we get to see you at the summit August 7th and 8th. Make sure to grab your ticket at globalleadership.org/summit. That's globalleadership.org/summit, where you can get the early bird price. And you guys, again, thanks for joining us. And just remember, everyone has influence, so lead where you are.